This is Harmony, a Unitarian Universalist community. We are a lay-led congregation based in the northeast suburbs of Cincinnati, balancing faith and reason since 2009.
So now, Kim, I think if you're ready, Kim Chambers is our sermon leader today. So Kim, take it away and let me know, and I will click your slides for you.
Good morning, everyone. Please bear with me. I didn't get very good sleep last night. But the time of my sermon is the Imprint trauma. The body keeps the score. It's based in part by the book listed on the screen by Bessel van der Kolk, and in part by a John Blank say the series on Netflix called Coronavirus Explained, specifically the last episode that they had, the third episode. If we want to move on to the next slide. Before I really get into all of this, please take care of yourself. We're going to be talking about things that may trigger some very deep, harsh feelings. This is definitely not a sermon for kids. So if you want to get a chance to kind of send them away, and so you don't have to answer questions that you may not be terribly comfortable with. If you need to walk away, turn the volume down at any point, do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself during this. And if we can move on to the next slide. The first thing that I noticed when I got into reading this book is it never actually defined what trauma was. So I went into looking at what defined trauma. And these are two definitions that I found to be all-encompassing. Trauma is the unique individual experience of an event or enduring conditions in which the individual's ability to integrate his or her emotional experience is overwhelmed, and the individual experiences, either objectively or subjectively, a threat to his or her life, bodily integrity, or that of a caregiver or family, by Sakavine in 2000. Cafasso in 2017 defined trauma as a traumatic event, as an incident that causes physical, emotional, spiritual, or psychological harm. Basically, when it comes down to it, it's not just whether or not it actually does harm, it's about the perception of whether or not it harms. It's both. It's a combination of both, how you take in what happens to you and what actually happens. Moving on. As someone already said this morning, 2020 sucks. And going on to the next slide. Thinking about some of the things that's happened so far in 2020. We're barely just a little bit halfway over. And we've dealt with wildfires in Australia, high conflict with the U.S. between Iran and North Korea, increased awareness of racial inequality in the U.S. and Europe, COVID-19 and the related quarantine, jobs being transitioned to working from home, being put on hold, being eliminated, being concerned about your access to healthcare. All kinds of things related to that. I didn't have enough room on the slide to list everything that every single politician could have possibly said and done, but there's been a lot of damage done to our basic needs related to that, and just personal experiences that keep on happening. There's still people who lose their homes to fires. There's still tornadoes. There's still earthquakes happening. There's still all these other traumas that are still happening and keep on going on. In addition, there's things that don't help like, they may not be traumatic, but they don't exactly make things better. Like the impeachment proceedings, murder hornets, and meth gators, and other wild animals, and not just because they're out in the wild. Very celebrity deaths that you know touch us in different ways. Tiger King and other confusing media. The separation of the British royal family, postponed or canceled events, different things that politicians have said that don't have any action with them, and just individual incidents that are part of everyday life. And I may be off base with either list. There may be some things that people may consider to be traumatic that I didn't put on there. It all depends on your perspective. There's just been a lot of stuff. um, but moving on. What happens during potential trauma? Um, the your autonomic nervous system, which is basically your brain stem for the most part, determines whether something's a threat. Normally, you're in your the two parts of your autonomic nervous system, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic, are in balance. The parasympathetic is keeping you thriving, helping you with your digestive system, making sure that you can think and um, get a chance to process things, and being able to grow and develop. While the sympathetic is more geared toward your survival. Um, that's what triggers the stress response. Um, it puts all your optional functions on hold. It increases your muscle tension, your heart rate, your breathing rate, so that you can get ready to survive whatever threat's coming your way. It also triggers what's often called the fight or flight response, but there's actually 4 different um, reactions that you can basically have. Fight, you're combating the threat, so you're throwing water on a fire. Flight, you try to remove yourself from the situation, going or getting as far away from it as you can, getting, to the basement when you hear a tornado siren. Freezing, when you're just frozen and you're still, if you were to see like a bear in the woods. And fawn, you give into the threat. You give them what they want, like handing over your wallet if you're being held up at gunpoint. Now, this is all well and good, but our bodies are not made for long-term trauma. This is, the sympathetic nervous system is only designed to get you, away from, that bear in the woods, that tornado, that fire, where it's only a few minutes. Let's see if we can go on to the next slide. But, with a lot of things that have been going on in 2020, you can't really fight it. You can't really run away from it. It doesn't, freezing doesn't do very much, and there's really nothing that it has that you can give it and give into it. Um, so a lot of times, many of us are confused, and that sympathetic nervous system keeps on going, and there's a lot of potential long-term effects of the stress. There've actually been studies just let me see my notes. Just in the U.S. at the beginning of this epidemic, about a third of U.S. adults have reported suffering from some high psychological distress. And just within a month into the epidemic in China, half of the doctors and nurses reported having depression, and almost as many of them reported having anxiety. This compared to, folks in 9/11, only like 11.2% of American folks reported having traumatic stress issues. But anywho, getting back to this current slide, um, there it it changes yourself. You know, it changes your focus, changes your attitude toward the world, and changes how you can function. You know, as a group, it changes, you know, again, how you function. When we saw 9/11, you know, we saw, you know, a surge of patriotism, you know, lots of red, white, and blue, and um, discussions how about group safety when we didn't really concern ourselves terribly much about that before. It can lead to a variety of mental health decline and the related consequences from that. Some people relive their trauma and, you know, trying to find their way into a better solution. Other people, you know, uh, they're just stuck in that way. Uh, they're stuck in that defining moment. Our immune systems get worn down, and either that or they're ramped up, and they start attacking perfectly healthy parts of our body. It can trauma can also affect memory or speech problems. They've actually done studies on Broca's area of the brain where trauma is related to where that part of the brain just shuts down. Other people experience loss of senses. There are many patients who report just losing, like they just don't really see them. They don't have as much of a sense of a different body part or just a sense of themselves in the world. Other people hold chronic physical pain. Just that prolonged tightness of muscles can trigger that. Fibromyalgia, migraines, um, digestive problems, and along with IBS. Again, going back to the sympathetic nervous system, one of the things that it does is it kind of puts the digestive system on semi-pause. Either it, you know, eliminates what you have, and you know, if you've heard of people talking about, you know, literally, you know, peeing themselves, that when they're scared, that's where that's from. Just kind of getting rid of what you have, and then everything else is put on hold. Um, you know, the stress from that, um, chronic fatigue. It's tiring battling this stuff. Um, Asthma, increased blood pressure, and heart disease can also be triggered. Just the disruption in the normal breathing and circulatory patterns of your body can really do a number on you. But moving on to the next slide, there are ways that we can deal with that. Um, obviously we can't fix 2020. We can't make it go away. But having, you know, purposeful movement, whether or not that's yoga or martial arts, or, you know, just even just having a schedule where you're doing everything in a pattern. There's a purpose for you doing stuff. You're not just laying around all day, you know, sitting in front of the TV eating bonbons. You know, there's a purpose to what you're doing. Self-awareness, being aware of how you're feeling and how it feels in your body. If you can find a way to, you know, put words to those feelings, I mean, it may not just be like one label, but being able to express how you're feeling and taking that time to get in touch with it instead of just going about the day and pushing it down. Having a good support network. Um, you know, any sort of way that you can get a hold of, you know, and connect with other people, you know, friends, family, even a therapist can be helpful, depending, you know, and there's no real threshold as to when you decide you need help. You know, you make that decision, you know yourself best. um, getting in with communal rhythms and synchrony. There, um, neuroscientists have found that our brain waves kind of jive together. We sync up with other people, and it's another way to connect when we sing together and when we recite things together. Um, I'm not sure how many of you have heard about the Disney sing-alongs that have been on TV, but you know, it may sound corny, but getting your kumbayayas out really does help. Um, um, Also, reaching out and appealing to your need for touch. I know that's easier said than done with some people, but um, even if it's just giving yourself a massage, having, making sure you're wearing stuff that feels good, um, and stuff like that, and just giving yourself um, comforting touches, comforting sensations. When we're all little, and and something's wrong, we always went to a caregiver for a hug, for soothing. Be your own caregiver in that sense. The last part is taking action. Um, doing something for yourself. Excuse me. um, or doing something for yourself or doing something for others. If you're doing something for yourself, look around and figure out what you can change, whether that's home improvement projects or um, something you've always wanted to learn that you can teach yourself safely at home. Um, do stuff for yourself, um, or if it's and getting in touch with play. And the picture that I have here, it's an Animal Crossing meme that I found actually yesterday. A lot of, from what I've heard, a lot of kids are playing Animal Crossing, Terraria, Roblox, Minecraft, because they can't control what's going on in the world, but they can control what's going on their island or on their Minecraft server. And it gives them something to focus on. And maybe for the adults, it might not be a bad idea to figure out what we can control that we enjoy doing. And helping others gives you that connection to other people and helps you feel like you matter in the grand scheme of things. It also, the helper's high, as it's called, triggers your reward system in your brain, which lowers some of the stress hormones that you're getting, and gives you the good feel neurotransmitters that you want as well. And last but not least, at the next slide. Before, I know I said a whole bunch of really awful, heavy, and a lot of heavy things, but before you all tie me up and take me away, there is a lot of things that we can't stop, and and just acknowledge that it is chaotic and confusing right now, but there's a lot of things that we can do, for ourselves and for other people to make things better. And so that 2020 doesn't turn out as bad, and it's not quite the end of the world as we know it. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Harmony UU podcast. Check us out online at harmonyuu.org for more details. You can also find us on Facebook. Just search Harmony UU. If you're in the Cincinnati area, please stop by one of our services on the first and third Sunday of each month at 10 a.m.